A lot of people think reaching retirement with $1.5 million means you've won, that the hard part is over, that once you hit that number, you're safe. But in 2026, that belief is starting to crack, because some retirees with $1.5 million feel financially secure, and others, they still wake up worried about money. Same amount, completely different reality. So what's going on? Did retirement suddenly become impossible? Did inflation quietly destroy what $1.5 million used to mean? Or is something else happening that most people never notice? Because right now, there's a growing wave of headlines saying even $1.5 million may not be enough anymore. And for many people nearing retirement, that's terrifying. After decades of working, saving, sacrificing, delaying vacations, putting money into 401ks, listening to every expert advice, to hear that it still might not be enough feels like the goalpost moved again. And that fear spreads fast, because once enough articles repeat something, it starts sounding like truth. But here's the part nobody tells you. That number alone doesn't actually tell you much. Not about your retirement, not about your freedom, and definitely not about whether you'll run out of money. Because retirement doesn't fail because of one number. It fails because of what sits behind that number. Taxes, spending, lifestyle, income strategy, and the mistakes people don't see until it's too late. So today, we're breaking this down differently. No scary headlines, no generic "you need more" advice. Just the real math, the hidden assumptions, and why two people can retire with the exact same $1.5 million and have completely different futures. Because the real problem, it's not always how much you saved. Sometimes, it's the story people tell you about what that money means.
Most people are taught to think about retirement in one simple way. Pick a number, save toward it, reach it, then everything works. That's the formula people trust. And for years, $1 million was that number. It sounded massive. For many families, it still does. But over time, that number changed. Inflation climbed, housing climbed, healthcare got more expensive. Groceries, insurance, utilities, everything moved. And slowly, $1 million stopped feeling like enough. So the conversation shifted. Now people say $1.5 million. Some say $2 million. Some even say $3 million. And every few months, another article appears saying the same thing. You need more than you think. Retirement is more expensive than ever. Your savings may not last. And after hearing that enough times, people stop questioning it. They just accept it. Because it sounds logical. If prices rise, you need more money. That part is true. But here's where the belief gets dangerous. People start assuming retirement success is only about the size of the account, as if the final balance alone decides everything. And that's where the fear starts growing. Someone sees $1.5 million and thinks, will that last? Another person sees the same number and thinks, I'm still behind. Even high savers start doubting themselves because they compare the number without understanding what the number actually does. That's the key difference. A retirement portfolio is not income by itself. It's not your paycheck. It's not your lifestyle. It's not your spending habits. It's not your tax bill. It's just the fuel. And fuel means nothing if you don't understand the engine. That's what most headlines leave out. They take one retirement balance, apply one simple assumption, and turn it into a fear story, because fear gets clicks. But real retirement planning is rarely that simple. And once you see what they're leaving out, the whole conversation starts looking very different.
Here's where almost everyone gets misled. Not because the math is hard, but because the assumptions are hidden. When an article says $1.5 million gives you only this much income, it usually sounds precise, calculated, objective, like it's settled fact. But that number often depends on a chain of assumptions most people never see. And if one assumption is wrong, the whole conclusion changes. That's the scary part, because people make life decisions based on those headlines. They delay retirement, work extra years, panic save, or assume they're falling behind, when the reality may be very different. Take one of the most common examples, a $1.5 million portfolio. a 4% withdrawal. That gives $60,000 per year. Simple enough. Then people hear, after taxes, that's much less. And suddenly that $60,000 sounds disappointing, almost fragile. But here's what often gets ignored. Taxes in retirement are not as simple as multiplying income by a tax bracket. That's not how the system works. A lot of people hear 22% tax bracket and assume all their money gets taxed at 22%. It doesn't. Only part of it may. And in retirement, deductions can dramatically change everything. That means two retirees taking the same withdrawal can keep very different amounts. Same portfolio, same withdrawal, different result. And taxes are only one piece. Most retirees are not living from one account. They may have Social Security Administration benefits, a pension, a brokerage account, a Roth account, part-time work, maybe rental income, maybe annuity payments. All of that changes the real picture. But many articles ignore all of it. Why? Because simple fear stories spread faster than complex truth. And once you leave out those details, 1.5 million can be made to look weak, even when it may support a strong retirement. That's the hidden problem. It's not that the number is wrong. It's that the system around the number is missing. And when people only look at one number, they often completely misunderstand what their retirement actually looks like. That's why smart people still feel confused, because the headline looks factual, but the foundation underneath it is often incomplete.
This is where retirement stops being math and becomes emotion. Because most people are not scared of numbers. They're scared of uncertainty, running out, becoming dependent, losing control later in life. That fear changes behavior. Even for people who did everything right. They saved consistently, built a portfolio, stayed disciplined. And yet, many still don't feel safe. Why? Because retirement isn't only about how much money you have. It's about how secure that money makes you feel. And those are not always the same thing. A person can have $1.5 million saved and still feel poor because they compare themselves to someone else, a neighbor with a bigger home, a friend who retired earlier, a relative who looks richer. That comparison quietly destroys confidence, and it happens all the time because people confuse looking wealthy with actually being financially secure. Those are two very different lives. One person buys the bigger house, newer car, expensive vacations, the image of success, the appearance that everything is handled. The other person lives below their means, smaller house, lower expenses, less flashy, but their retirement may be far stronger. That's hard for people to accept because our culture rewards appearance, not stability. And that creates one of the biggest retirement traps, lifestyle inflation. The more people earn, the more they upgrade life, not because they need to, because it feels normal. A nicer home, a luxury SUV, private memberships, higher recurring bills. It grows quietly, and by retirement, their lifestyle requires a huge amount of cash just to maintain. That's when the stress begins, not because they failed, because their expenses grew faster than their freedom. And here's what makes it worse. Most people don't notice this while it's happening. They just assume, I'm making more, so I'm doing better. But income can hide bad decisions for years until retirement removes the paycheck. That's when reality shows up. Suddenly, every monthly expense matters. Every withdrawal matters. Every market drop feels personal. And many realize something uncomfortable. They didn't build financial freedom. They built an expensive lifestyle that needs constant funding. That's why two people can retire with the same amount and feel completely different. One feels calm, the other feels trapped. Because retirement doesn't just expose your savings, it exposes your habits. And habits decide far more than most people think.
This is the part most people miss. They focus on the retirement number, but the number is only storage. The real question is, how efficiently does that money support your life? Think of retirement like a water tank. Your savings is the tank. $1.5 million is the amount of water inside. At first, that sounds like everything. More water means more security, right? But here's what actually matters. The leak. Your spending is the leak. Taxes are the leak. Debt is the leak. Healthcare costs, lifestyle inflation, bad withdrawals, poor planning, all leaks. And some people have leaks so large, even a huge tank drains faster than expected. That's why one person can retire comfortably with less, while another struggles with more. It's not always the size of the tank, it's how fast the water leaves. That changes everything. Because most retirement advice focuses on accumulation. Save more, invest more, grow the account. And yes, that matters. But once retirement begins, the game changes. Now it's about management, control, efficiency, longevity, the system. That's the shift people miss. The same $60,000 withdrawal can feel completely different depending on how the system is built. For one retiree, lower expenses, no mortgage, minimal debt, tax-efficient withdrawals, Social Security covering part of expenses. That $60,000 feels strong. For another, large mortgage, higher taxes, expensive habits, helping adult children, medical bills. That same $60,000 feels tight. Same withdrawal, different life. That's why retirement planning is less about chasing one number and more about designing the machine behind the number. The machine determines whether your money lasts, not just the balance. And this is why headlines often create confusion, because they reduce retirement to a single snapshot, one portfolio, one withdrawal, one estimate, as if everyone's life works the same. But retirement is not a spreadsheet, it's a living system. Your expenses change, markets change, health changes, goals change. Some years cost more, some years cost less. That's normal. And that's why flexibility matters more than perfection. People who succeed in retirement usually don't have the perfect number. They have the better system. A strong savings base, multiple income sources, lower fixed costs, flexibility, and emotional discipline when things change. That's the real framework, not how much do I need. A better question is, how much does my life actually require, and how efficiently can my money support it? That question changes retirement from fear to clarity.
This is where many retirements quietly break. Not in one dramatic moment, not overnight, usually slowly, and often for reasons people never expected. Because most retirement plans don't fail from one bad year, they fail from small weaknesses that stack over time. And once those weaknesses build up, the money starts feeling smaller than it really is. The first problem is timing. Retiring during a strong market feels easy. Account balances look healthy, confidence is high, withdrawals feel safe. But retiring into a downturn, that changes the entire emotional experience. The same $1.5 million suddenly looks fragile. A market drop can erase years of gains, and many people panic right there. They cut spending, delay plans, or worse, sell investments emotionally. That's where long-term damage begins, because retirement isn't only about surviving the math, it's surviving your own reactions. And this happens more than people admit. The second problem is overspending. Not reckless spending, normal spending. That's what makes it dangerous. Dining out more, helping family, home upgrades, travel, subscriptions, medical costs, unexpected repairs. Individually, none of these feel serious. Together, they quietly change everything. That's the catch. People often budget for retirement income, but underestimate retirement lifestyle, and the gap between those two becomes expensive. The third problem is depending on one source. This is huge. Some retirees rely almost entirely on one portfolio, one withdrawal stream, one account, one market outcome. That creates fragility, because if markets struggle or inflation rises, there's no cushion, no backup, no flexibility. The strongest retirements usually have layers: Social Security Administration, investments, cash reserves, brokerage funds, sometimes rental income, sometimes part-time work by choice. That creates breathing room, and breathing room reduces mistakes. The fourth problem is emotional investing. This one hurts smart people too. A bad year happens, markets fall, news headlines become negative, fear spreads, and suddenly people stop following their own plan. They withdraw too much, or stop investing entirely, or sit in cash for too long. And this can cost more than inflation, because fear changes timing, and bad timing damages even strong portfolios. That's why retirement success is rarely about being the smartest investor. It's often about being the calmest, because the truth is uncomfortable. A strong portfolio can survive many market conditions. What often destroys it is panic combined with poor decisions. That's where everything breaks. Not because 1.5 million was too small, but because the system wasn't built to handle real life, and real life always tests the plan. Let's make this real, because this is where numbers stop being theory. Imagine two people, same age, same retirement year, same $1.5 million saved. At first glance, their futures should look almost identical, but they don't. Meet David Miller. David is 65. He spent decades climbing his career. Good salary, nice house,
luxury SUV in the driveway, country club membership, annual trips. From the outside, he looks like he won. He retires with $1.5 million in his 401k, and everyone around him says the same thing. You're set. And honestly, David believes it too. Now meet Mark Patel. Same age, also retires with $1.5 million, but his life looks different. Smaller house, mortgage paid off years ago, no expensive upgrades, no debt. He drove his cars longer, lived below his income, kept expenses simple. To some people, he looked less successful, less flashy, maybe even overly cautious. But then retirement starts, and this is where everything changes. David begins withdrawing money. The account is strong. The balance looks reassuring at first, but his monthly costs are high. Property taxes, maintenance, insurance, travel habits, dining out, subscriptions, helping adult children financially, unexpected medical expenses. The withdrawals feel manageable until they don't. A market dip hits. The portfolio drops. Now every withdrawal feels heavier, and suddenly David starts checking his account constantly. He delays trips, cuts spending, sleeps worse. He has money, but he doesn't feel secure. Now look at Mark. Same market drop, same headlines, same economic uncertainty, but his costs are low. His expenses are predictable. Social Security Administration covers part of his monthly needs. His withdrawal rate stays lower, and because he built margin, he doesn't panic. That changes everything. 10 years later, the difference becomes obvious. David had the bigger lifestyle, but Mark built the stronger system. David looked richer. Mark stayed free. And that's the part people rarely see. Retirement doesn't reward appearance. It rewards flexibility. Because once paychecks stop, the portfolio isn't just money. It becomes the engine of your daily life. And how hard that engine has to work depends entirely on the system you built before retirement ever started.
So if $1.5 million alone doesn't decide retirement, what actually matters? The answer is simpler than most people expect. It's not chasing the perfect number. It's building a system that can absorb real life. Because life will change, markets will change, expenses will change. The strongest retirement plans are built for that reality, not for perfect conditions. So let's break it down into 5 practical principles. The first is margin. This is the most underrated one. Margin means your life costs less than your resources can comfortably support. That gap creates freedom. Without margin, every surprise feels like a threat. A home repair, medical issue, family emergency, inflation spike. Suddenly everything feels expensive. But when your expenses stay below your capacity, retirement gets easier. That's the difference between surviving and breathing. The second is a layered income. Many people think their investment account has to do all the work. It doesn't, and it shouldn't. Strong retirement usually comes from multiple streams: Social Security Administration, investment withdrawals, cash reserves, brokerage accounts, sometimes pension income, sometimes part-time work, not because you have to, but because you choose to. That flexibility reduces pressure on the portfolio, and lower pressure means more longevity. The third is tax strategy. This gets ignored constantly. 2 retirees can withdraw the same amount and keep very different income after taxes. That means planning matters. Where money sits matters. Traditional accounts, Roth accounts, brokerage accounts. The order you withdraw from them can change everything. A lot of people focus on growing wealth, but keeping more of it may matter even more. The fourth is emotional discipline. This one decides outcomes more than people think. Markets will fall. Headlines will become dramatic. Fear will spread. And retirement makes every market move feel personal. The people who succeed are not always the smartest. They're usually the calmest, because reacting emotionally often does more damage than the market itself. The fifth is flexibility. This may be the biggest one. Most people imagine retirement spending stays constant, but life rarely works that way. Some years cost more, some years less. Travel changes, health changes, needs change. Being willing to adjust spending when necessary creates enormous safety. That's what many successful retirees do, quietly. They don't follow rigid rules. They adapt, and adaptation protects wealth. That's the real framework, not save one giant number. Build a life that doesn't require constant maximum withdrawals. Because once your system is strong, the number becomes much more powerful than people think.
Fast forward 10 years. 2 retirees. Same starting portfolio. Same $1.5 million. Same year they left work. But now,
Their lives look nothing alike. David Miller still has a respectable balance. On paper, he's okay, but his relationship with money changed. Every large expense feels stressful. He watches markets every week. He delays repairs, thinks twice before helping family, cancels trips he once assumed were normal. The money is still there, but peace isn't, because his retirement depends on the portfolio performing well every year, without interruption. That creates pressure. Now look at Mark Patel. Smaller monthly needs, more flexibility, lower fixed costs, multiple income streams. He still notices inflation. He still notices market declines, but he doesn't feel controlled by them. That's the difference. The same downturn that creates stress for one feels manageable for the other. Same economy, same inflation, same retirement decade, different systems. And that creates completely different emotions. David feels like his money is shrinking. Mark feels like his life is stable. One built a lifestyle that required constant performance. The other built a system that could absorb uncertainty. That's why retirement is not just a savings problem. It's a resilience problem. Because eventually, everyone faces market declines, healthcare costs, unexpected family expenses. Something changes. And in that moment, the strongest portfolio is not always the biggest. It's the one supporting this simpler, more flexible life. That's where freedom actually lives, not in the account balance, in how little stress that balance creates.
So, what's the real story behind $1.5 million in retirement? It's not too little, and it's not automatically enough. That's the truth most headlines skip, because the number by itself doesn't decide your future. The system does. A person can retire with $1.5 million and struggle. Another can retire with the same amount and feel completely secure. Not because one got lucky, because one built a stronger financial life around that money. That's the difference. And this matters because fear sells. Every few weeks there's another article saying, you need more, you're behind, retirement costs are exploding, your savings won't last. And for people approaching retirement, that creates panic. But panic can lead to the wrong decisions, working years longer than necessary, constantly moving the target, feeling like no amount is ever enough. That becomes exhausting and often unnecessary, because retirement isn't about finding one magic number. It's about understanding how your life interacts with your money, how much you spend, how efficiently you withdraw, how much flexibility you built, how many backup options exist when life changes. Those are the things that determine whether your savings feel strong or fragile. That's why two households can have identical portfolios and live completely different retirements. Same balance, different peace. And peace is the part people underestimate, because at some point, retirement stops being about maximizing wealth. It becomes about protecting your freedom, the ability to live without constant fear, without checking the market every day, without feeling like one bad year could ruin everything. That's real security, and that's why the conversation around retirement needs to change. Less fear, less clickbait, more context, more honest math, more understanding of what actually matters. Because real wealth is not about reaching a number people told you to chase. It's about building a life where money supports you, without controlling you. And when that happens, $1.5 million may look very different than most headlines want you to believe.